The Honey Island swamp, a tangled maze of bayous, ancient cypress trees and murky water, carried a reputation older than the weathered signs warning tourists to stay away. By nightfall, the swamp transformed into a living, breathing nightmare. Locals whispered about the Honey Island swamp monster, a hulking, ape-like creature with matted fur, yellowed eyes and claws sharp enough to rend bone from flesh. But for those who ventured too deep, the swamp's secrets were far more horrifying than the monster itself. Marla, Greg and Sam, urban explorers fueled by adrenaline and a penchant for danger, had heard the stories. They weren't just looking for a thrill, they wanted proof. Armed with cameras, flashlights and enough liquor to dull their nerves, the trio set out under the cover of a foggy night. They ignored the warnings, the missing persons, the gutted animals found floating belly up in the bayou. To them, it was folklore. A drunken fisherman's tale. The air grew thick as they trudged deeper into the swamp. Cicadas buzzed, and the occasional splash of water hinted at unseen creatures beneath the surface. The heady smell of decay hung in the air, a mix of rotting wood and something fouler, like copper and spoiled meat.
Do you smell that?
It's the swamp.
No, it's different. They found the first body an hour later. It wasn't human, at least not anymore. The torso was bloated, the skin mottled with strange pulsating welts that oozed a black viscous fluid. Its limbs had been gnawed to the bone, and something had carved strange symbols into the flesh.
We need to go, now.
Greg, ever the skeptic, snapped a picture.
This is exactly what we came for.
This isn't right, man. This is something else.
Then they heard it, a low, guttural growl that seemed to reverberate through the trees. It wasn't far.
Run.
But it was too late. The creature stepped into the beam of their flashlights. 7 feet tall, its fur was matted with blood and swamp grime. Its eyes glowed an unnatural yellow, and its mouth, lined with jagged teeth, curled into a snarl. It moved with unnatural speed, closing the distance between them in seconds. Greg screamed as the monster's claws tore into his chest, sending a spray of blood across the cypress roots.
Greg, no.
Marla grabbed Sam's arm, dragging him away as Greg's cries turned into wet, choking gurgles. They ran blindly through the swamp, their flashlights bouncing wildly. The monster's guttural growls echoed behind them, growing louder.
We're going to die here.
Marla didn't answer. Her heart pounded in her ears, drowning out everything but the instinct to survive. They stumbled into a clearing, their shoes sinking into the muddy ground. In the center was an altar made of bones, its surface slick with blood. Around it were the remains of other explorers, skulls split open, spines ripped out, their bodies arranged like offerings.
What the hell is this?
But she had no time to process. The monster stepped into the clearing, its fur gleaming in the moonlight. Behind it, a shadowy figure emerged from the trees, a man draped in a cloak of animal hides, his face painted with swamp mud and blood. The creature didn't act on its own, it obeyed.
Sacrifices. The swamp must be fed.
The swamp must be fed. Marla lunged for Sam, but he was already rooted to the spot, frozen in terror. The monster pounced, its claws sinking into his flesh. He screamed, but the sound was drowned out by the monster's growls and the man's low, guttural chanting. Marla turned and ran, tears streaming down her face. The swamp seemed alive, its roots reaching for her, its branches clawing at her skin. Behind her, Sam's screams stopped abruptly. She didn't stop running until the swamp swallowed her whole. When the search party found her 3 days later, she was huddled beneath a cypress tree, her clothes shredded, her skin pale and slick with mud. She muttered the same phrase over and over, her eyes glassy and vacant.